Telling a story isn't about perfection. It's about communication. It's about our shared moments together. Hi, my name is Jeff Price, and I would like to welcome you to Intentional Musicianship, where we look at everything that goes on at center stage and the preparation behind the scenes needed to transform your performance into an unforgettable experience. I am here to encourage you, support you, and generally have a great time being united together with you through music. After a wonderful performing career as a storytelling musician around the globe, my joy is found empowering musicians to find the freedom to go beyond the music stand and the fourth wall of the concert stage to better engage with their audience members. This podcast isn't a classroom, it's a brainstorming session, and it is meant for musical performers of all ages. Together, we'll explore performance practice, stagecraft, the nuances of storytelling, and the strategies for genuine audience engagement. We're here to discover what truly makes a live performance resonate. Okay, so for today's show, I want to talk about what I learned from going to a musical show, a real event. Now, the more events you go to, you gain inspiration, you learn, you grow. And a lot of these things that you see in these shows and hear can really impact what you do personally as a performer. So in the context of today's podcast, I think we're going to talk about storytelling and how you can set the mood and the environment for the show. A little bit about how we might be able to use multimedia and how we're going to integrate it into the program, and how we might get some community involvement. Basically, this show that I went to was fantastic at creating memories and stories that would leave a lasting impact on all of us in the audience. It was designed to make a real connection. Plus, the big personal takeaway that I saw when I went to the show as a musician is you may be the star and you might be the particular focus of the event, but you don't have to do everything yourself. You have musical friends, you have colleagues, and folks that can help you make your vision for your show a reality. In essence, your network makes the dream work. So as we talk about these things, I'm going to talk about this great show in my local area that I went to. Now, I'm going to ask for forgiveness of the pronunciation of the star of the show. I'm just not good at saying it. But here is the name of the show and the person we're talking about. The event was called Sonic Bloom, Nina Asimakopoulos, and Friends. And that may be the best I say her name today. So I'm just going to call her Dr. Nina or Nina today. I tell you what, she is a wonderful music professor and the flute instructor at West Virginia University in Morgantown, West Virginia. And you know she's a fantastic teacher because she was just named as a 2024 Benedum Distinguished Scholar, which that's a big deal internally at the university, especially when you have the music professors named. So Nina is known for this once a year creation of hers. It's an event for the community that she has. And last year, I was too busy doing other events and I missed the show. Now, I've heard the event changes, year to year, but it's always engaging. It always has different themes and different things that come up. So last year, what I heard was there was a lot of dance and choreography. And I heard from the audience members that I was in line with and things like that, that one time she even had a pool of water and she dove and she had to learn how to hold her breath. Now I'm hearing these things again from the people in line that I'm standing with. And these are the people that come back again and again. This buzz happens every year and the people always come back because they want to see what she comes up with next. She's a visionary. So I just thought I'd walk through some of the things and the concept and the takeaways from what I saw from this truly great show. Now, first, I want to let you know this show had some of the best audience engagement, storytelling, moments that we could remember. And it was just a well-performed design event that I've been to in a really long time. But the thing I was really struck with was that she had this great vision for the show. And I was struck that she didn't have to do it all herself. And let me tell you what that means and what I saw. That means I saw people helping her with her vision, whether it been like the sound design and the lighting design. And she had all sorts of friends with some arrangements for music and other music performed on the show. And there were just a lot of things going on within that event. She had a whole bunch of people helping her, even regional partnerships with a lot of different organizations, because this particular Sonic Bloom with Nina and Friends event seemed to be really focused on our waterways in West Virginia and having clean water. So as I'm looking at my program right here, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 minimum regional organizations that she had involved in the show. And many of them had tables at the event with people you could actually ask about what they do and how to get involved and how to help out. And I'll tell you what, you talk about making an event sort of blossom into other things, that's how you do it. Because even with that, you start building a buzz and a support because of the partners that you have in the area. But let me get back and sort of set the scene up for this event, because it seems like this event gets bigger each year. Now, this event is pretty big. And, if you go to college campuses and stuff, sometimes, you might not need a ticket in advance. You can just get it when you walk up. And this is a ticketed event, and it's a free concert, which is amazing because of just how truly incredible it was. And it was one I put on my calendar probably 9 months ago so I wouldn't miss it. But I didn't realize, because of all the events I go to at my alma mater, that these tickets would be in such demand. So I called a couple weeks out thinking I would be safe to get a ticket. The website instantly said it was sold out. So I called the box office and I got myself on the wait list. And, it was interesting. It's been a long time since I've been on a wait list. So I had to find out all the procedures and all the particulars. So I talked to a lot of the box office personnel and a lot of the staff. And it was neat because when I got to the event, those same people were there that I had talked to, and they basically took care of me through each step of the process. And for Nina, in this case for this show, it's good to have friends like that in the box office. There was a support system in place that controlled those tickets and the entryway for the event to make sure everybody got a seat. Now, for us waitlisters, we just sort of had to hang out on the side in the foyer, and then we were let in around 5 minutes prior. Now, the cool thing was we were actually just we got to talk to one another, and we talked to each other about why we were there and what we were expecting. And that's where I got a lot of good stories about what people had seen in the past. Now, imagine if you were Nina and you had to control the tickets of your show, or you had to deal with what happens to the crowd if you were overbooked. Well, she didn't have to worry about any of this stuff. All these folks in the box office took care of the process, and it was seamless. Now, from our position, we could hear all the pre-show activities, and we'll talk about those in a second. And it was great to just talk to the people that I was going to sit with in the audience. Everyone was excited to be there. Now, the show was a big deal when this fella, Gordon Gee, who is the president of the university, was walking in to watch the show. Now, he said hello to me, and he said hello to the others in the line, and we all just talked to him for a second, and he went off to his seat. He came because Nina is that much of a powerhouse in this community. So when I walked in, the first thing that struck me were these area conservation group tables and the people that were manning the tables. And of course, I'm an extrovert, so I quickly did my best to talk with some of them. And of course, I talked to them after the event. I want to know why they were there and who they were representing and what things were happening and why they were here. So at the same time before the show, there was some pre-music. Now, I told you we heard this out in the foyer. Now, for this event, it was some old-time bluegrass and old Appalachian folk songs and things like that. Now, we heard this from our location in the foyer, like I was saying, and it was a group called the Morgantown Old Time Ensemble. And they had the guitar, the vocals, the mandolin, upright bass, clawhammer, banjo, and the fiddle. Now, these aren't things that you normally think of when you go to a flute show. And it really worked well. It sort of added to the entire event. And it really worked because it linked us to Appalachia. And that was really a nice theme with water in Appalachian region of the United States. And that's because, if you don't know, West Virginia is the only state that from end to end, north, south, east, west, all of it is within that Appalachian mountain range. So as we got ready to start, you could see that the stage had really been decked out. Some people spent a lot of time on setup. It seemingly had a lot of driftwood on that center stage right, upstage right area. And I think, or at least I thought, that was just setting the scene for something. But, I didn't know what was going to happen and what to expect. There was an artist table with artist drawings, and that was at center stage left. And then various instruments and flutes around the rest of the stage. And so all of a sudden, the lights dimmed and we knew it was showtime. And there was an offstage mic. And it was a really great, effective use of narration because Nina had pre-recorded the introduction narration. It was one less thing she had to do, and it set the scene perfectly. Then at the appropriate time in the narration, she walked in this flowing white dress that really helped sell the mood, and she was hit with the single spotlight. Now, for today's event, she had written and developed a brand new piece of music that she was going to share with us. And it was weaved into a short story that she had created. So this piece had narration and music and other media. And the sonic picture that was unfolding before us was about finding a piece of driftwood on the New River in West Virginia. So as the story goes, she went through a possible history of that piece of driftwood. She made the wood a central character and theme for her story and this event. Now, she went into the growth of the wood and into its 45 rings, and then the tree falling and somehow making it into the water. And of course, the New River is one of those oldest rivers in the world. And on this kayak trip that Nina was on, I think I learned that, and we discovered this, that she had discovered this piece of driftwood. And at the appropriate, so she sort of put the driftwood off to the side in a place that she could find it. And later she went back and she picked it up so she could form it into a flute. So after telling the story of this flute, which was very demonstrative, very emotional. And as she did this, and while she did this, she had the other musicians playing. We had the synthesizer going and other percussion closer to downstage right. Now remember, they had all that driftwood, and that was on center and upstage right that was there. And I thought it was maybe just art or set a scene, but actually that was part of the percussion section. And, it maybe symbolized all that other driftwood and all that wood over the passage of time on the New River. And as we continued, we also had a film that was sort of inset in there by a guy named Jay Young with the New River Gorge. And the piece was lovely and complemented everything really well. Now, because it was dark in the theater, I wouldn't even be able to tell you how long the story was. It was one of those things that we were all really engaged and we were all really enjoying ourselves. And we sort of just got lost in the moment. In that story, it just kept building and building. And then she picked up this piece of wood that she had formed and crafted, and she started playing this brand new flute, the wooden flute from this piece of driftwood. Now, at the end of this piece, it was interesting to reflect on that setup because we had the videos, we had the audio, we had the story, we had her instruments. But this was an event, and each thing seemed to segue and transition into the next scene, so to speak. So, as she walked off stage, two people from within the audience stood up. And it turned out they happened to be from one of those conservation groups that had been invited. And in this case, it was from the Friends of Cheat. The Cheat River is right next to us there in Morgantown. And they walked up to downstage right and just started talking to one another, just like anybody would have a conversation with the next person. And they started talking about the local area and the meaning of the waterways and some of the local preservation efforts and how over the years they'd worked to reclaim some parts of the Cheat River, which were really known for in this area for recreation. And they talked about some of the mine drainage that had occurred and some of those negative things that can happen if we don't take care of things. And they talked about how that group has actually helped the river in many ways. Now, everything for the day sort of fit with this water preservation story and how water was, really important to us, which it is. It wasn't preachy. It was just people out in the community that really enjoyed being out there and enjoying nature. And when you saw that and you then saw opportunities to help and fix things and to be a part of the community, that made it a great event. And that's what these two folks talked about, is how they got together. And part of that was from some of the concerts that happened to support the Cheat River. It was just a normal conversation that you and I might have if we got together on the street. And it was nice to be included as an audience member in that natural conversation that the two of them were having. Now, after this, the show kept exploring our Appalachian heritage. And so they brought out some old time music again. And so they sort of squeezed that in between that art on center stage left and center stage. And they wanted to play some old fiddle tunes. Now, growing up from around here, I got to let you know, it's a very unique flavor. And it's got like a call feeling. It's not like what you would hear on a radio. I can't describe how this lead singer was singing, but it's like a chant, but it's not. It's more like an auction call to me. It's loud and it has a unique whine to it. I think that's just for that carrying power. Now, the group started telling more stories, and in this case, they spoke by playing a couple songs. One was about a waterfall, and the other, we're just talking a lot of things about water. Now, again, the theme worked really well, and it weaved into the story and within that line of the show and really helped that show pop. And I think it's important to note that, we were there for Nina, but even though she was the focus, she didn't have to take the entire load of this musical event herself. And you think about that vision and that trust that she allowed all these other people to be a part and to connect and be part of this special event. I mean, I think that's one of the great things that just makes her a really special person. She could have just been the soloist. And there are times and places within that show that she was showcased. But I just love how she had everybody else involved. Now, the next thing we had was a film by Nina. It was called River Journeys. And it was pretty special, an intimate moment for me because it allowed me and us as the audience to see another side of Nina. The short film was about kayakers, and it was talking to them about what made the river special. And I thought it was great because we had this wonderful musician, this flutist, who teaches flute at the university here at West Virginia. And she's just a creative genius. And she's telling these wonderful stories through film on top of what she wrote as a story and her musicianship. I want to say that this concert, and I say it had a feeling of this whole show had a feeling, and I was talking to people about it. It felt like an IMAX because you could always hear the water rushing in a lot of these videos, and the sound seemed like it surrounded you. And maybe that was the sound design or just how the hall worked. But the way they did this and the way they designed everything, it was a truly immersive experience for everybody. Now, then another fellow came up downstage center from my view, and he had a didgeridoo. And he was sort of like Nina in that he had found a piece of driftwood. And he crafted this typical Australian Aboriginal instrument right here in Appalachia. And he decided to debut it for everybody. Now, the didgeridoo and the percussionist then played again to close off this part of the show. And it was just interesting as that scene, and you're looking at the driftwood and you're looking at the didgeridoo and the percussionist playing. And then to the right, we have all that art. Oh, sorry, to stage left, to my right, stage left. And there was an artist named Asimakopoulos, and studies for trees and waterways and the ways of the water. So then we had another field recording by Nina for the watershed and an underwater film to set the mood for a lot of things. And then Nina had another film, I think it was called The Fruiting Body. And there was another fella in this who talked about the Mon Valley mushrooms, Monongahela Valley, Monongalia County. That's our region. Sometimes things just go by Mon because sometimes it gets confusing with Monongalia or Monongahela. And so this Mon Valley mushrooms, and this fella talked about the importance of mushrooms in the area. Hey, you need clean water for mushrooms. So they finished off with another film. Let's see, I think it was called Rooted Dreams. So we talked about the spalted birch. So in the context of all this stuff with the Mon Valley mushrooms and things, Nina came out. And now she was wearing this white flowing dress. And for this, she had a huge mushroom headpiece, specifically the fruited body headpiece mask from Mon Valley mushrooms, where she then played another piece on another of these driftwood flutes that she created. So within this hour period, like I said, it was just an amazing, immersive experience. So if we look at our takeaways and things for the show, I just can't say enough about how having a vision of the event is really important. And then being able to gather people to share that with, not only as collaborators, but also the audience. Wow, makes a great experience. So at the end of the event, I loved how she just welcomed everybody down very simply to come and see these new instruments, to touch the instruments, to see the driftwood, to see the art, and to talk to everybody. Now that receiving line, I want to say I was there talking to people for at least 45 minutes. And I'm one of those people that really appreciate that, because sometimes when you're at the end of shows, the artists are like, I'm done, let's get on the bus, and it's time to go home. In this case, everybody lingered. They talked. They were a community. It's like the show sort of unified everybody for that moment in purpose. People were manning the tables. You could just talk to people about their conservation efforts. People like me that were new to this kind of event just came. I just started talking to people and wanted to know why everybody came to the event and hear everybody's response about what they saw and what they really enjoyed about the show, why they came and what they learned. Because I go to a lot of shows, I knew a lot of her students, so I started talking to the members of the flute studio, because I tell you what, I was struck because I've not got to see this side of Nina before and how incredible a storytelling artist she really is. And I wanted to see how she taught them. And I think one thing I've realized about Nina in the time that I've known her since like coming back to West Virginia and my retirement from the Army is that she is this amazing storyteller and she has a way about her. She's truly authentic to herself. And she's one of the few teachers that really ensures that the students really understand that it's more than just the music. It's that connection from the artist to then the music and then how it conveys to the public. Now, I remember talking to her a little bit back and forth on Instagram, and I honestly don't know her very well. And hopefully I'll get to know her more, through the years, going to her shows, seeing her at concerts and things. But we were just chatting a bit, and I told her about sort of why I do things, because there's some subtle difference between what she does and how I view things. But it sort of meets in the middle because like sometimes I mention this paradigm of being a musician as an artist or a musician as a servant for a function. And there's a sliding paradigm and it sort of slides depending on the event. And I use that to sort of get my why for what I'm doing for any particular show. And so most of the time, push comes to shove on a 50-50 split, I'll always go and serve the people. And I'm more of a functional musician, but I always strive to be a great artist. And Nina, on the other hand, in some ways, the way I see her as just such an amazing artist that her artistry then connects the music to the community and people. And it's interesting because those two sides are almost like two sides of the same coin, because her event is the same event that I would create if I had a functional event, because we're trying to connect with the audience. We're trying to tell stories. We're trying to create moments. We're trying to create that unity of purpose for that community and make that special time for everybody. And for her show and that art that she created so brilliantly, it had this sort of natural call to action, and she didn't have to say much because the show and what we saw and what we heard, it just naturally engaged with us as that community, as that audience. And so naturally, it has that service aspect. And we all sort of thought to ourselves, I can think that, hey, we want to protect the things that are important to us, and we need and enjoy clean water. I mean, who doesn't love clean water, So this event is one of those ones that's going to linger in my mind, and I think everybody else that was in the audience, for a good long time. And I know that the consequence is that next year, when the next event happens, I know all of us are going to want to come back. So the next time that you're ready, or you're getting ready to design a show and you want to think outside the box and you want to think about connecting with your audience in a bigger way, you may want to think about the concepts that Nina used for her show. And it might be one that you sort of want to go back to and remember and just sort of listen and say, how can I be a little bit more like Nina and effectively tell this story that you have the vision for? And you're going to ask yourself, how can we create these moments to connect with everyone that they remember? Should we use video? You might ask yourself, how are we going to effectively communicate the message of this show better? Are we going to work on our stage design? Are we going to enhance our lighting? Are there ways that we can just enhance the message of the show by bringing in other people like from the community? Always remember that you don't have to do this alone. We all need a little help from our friends. Now, if you like some of the concepts and the ideas that we talked about today, I would love for you to reach out and talk to us here at Intentional Musicianship. Now, I put the link in our show notes, but it's just intentionalmusicianship.com. I would love to hear feedback from each and every one of you, and I'd really like to get to know your needs better. Consequently, each of you are welcome to schedule a free meet and greet Zoom call. Now, don't worry, this isn't a setup. For me, as an extreme extrovert, this is just my way to get to meet you and to start building a relationship. Paid services for intentional musicianship are only available to musicians after this free meet and greet Zoom call. And that's because I want to make sure that we're a good fit and that we can actually effectively assist you in meeting your goals. That's it for today's episode. We hope that some of the topics and issues addressed today will be useful to you as you move forward in your musical journey. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you for joining us today. We know your time is precious, and we really appreciate that you have taken the time to listen to us today. Consequently, we'd like to hear from each and every one of you. You can reach out and connect with us at intentionalmusicianship.com. My hope is that we build a community where we can encourage one another through our mutual experiences performing live music. I look forward to connecting with each of you again on the next episode of Intentional Musicianship.